Here's how I destroyed Mexico's most racist and biggest myth using video essays. It is called the Mestizo myth or La Raza Cósmica. So the myth goes like this. Mexico is only Spanish and indigenous. There was no slavery in Mexico. People who live in Mexico currently are only Spanish and a mix of indigenous, and that is it. And that is one of the biggest lies in Mexican culture, because when the Spanish came to colonize the Americas, they called it Nueva España, meaning that it was the American Southwest and modern day Mexico. The Spanish, because they're not going to do the labor, brought in people who were enslaved from West Africa and Central Africa into Nueva España. So for over 300 years, the Spaniards brought between 200,000 to 1,000,000 West African and Central African people and enslaved them in modern day Mexico and the American Southwest. And even according to the census by colonial government, these are the top states that had African descended people inside of them. Now, that's not counting people who had children with indigenous people and children with Spanish people. Now compare that to only 15,000 Europeans. So by 1810, there were 25 times more West African people that lived in Mexico or modern day Mexico than the Spanish. Now these are substantial numbers of West African and Central African people in Mexico during the colonial period. But how did all of these people get erased by the then Mexican government? Well, you can blame this guy. His name was Jose Vasconcelos, and he was the head of the education department in the 1930s, and he forced children to learn about La Raza Cósmica. And in his book, he said that Mexico is only indigenous and Spanish. What about West African people, the third root of Mexico? What about them? Well, they didn't exist in his mind. And so all of the country and all of the country's culture that had West African and Central African heritage was erased in a campaign that is called the Blancamiento. And so I started making videos about this process, about how West African people were erased from Mexican culture, and I got millions of views. I can no longer say that Mexico is a mestizo country, because it is not. It's important to remember that we are a multiracial country with multiple cultures and multiple people in our country who contributed to the Mexican identity. If you want to learn how to make video essays and break myths, DM me. I can help you.